what's been going on today is part of a much bigger picture that I think a lot of other people here are aware of. But what I'd like to get information on is there seems like there's three things coming at us. So the American, the European, and there's us. And is there some place that we could get all that information about these different pieces of legislation and how they're sort of coming at us so we understand what's going on?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yes and no. So, for example, at the NHPPA website, we're very heavy on Bill C-36, for example, but we're lighter on Codex. And the trade stuff. What would you suggest for CETA? I know if you Google it, you'll find stuff on it.
Yeah, you will find information on CETA on the web, but there are some articles that I've written on CETA and on what's happening. They are located at CanadiansForHealthFreedom.wordpress.com.
Okay, they're all on there, so I could get a good picture.
Yeah, and as far as sorry.
While we were sleeping.
All right, I'll mark that down when I get back. Thank you.
As far as international, right now there's actually not a lot of information kind of coordinating what's happening in 3 trade blocks. Like I know I'm involved in a periodic conference with Jonathan Emord, who's a lawyer in the United States that does what I do. He fights the FDA. And then Dr. Robert Verkerk, who Helke mentioned, who runs the ANH and European Union. And we have these conference calls to kind of compare notes as to what's happening. And the intention is to create actually an international strategy, but it's not been done yet. And there's really been no effort yet to kind of, okay, here's the similarities and the differences in what we need to do. But we actually believe we've got to fight it internationally because it's happening internationally, not just Canadian. But right now we're behind the 8 ball on that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, that's a really wonderful question.
Hello. I'm sorry I haven't read the Bill C-36 yet, but would you happen to know what sections would be unconstitutional in that bill?
Well, sure. I mean, so for example, when I told you about the seizure power, that's Section 21. I think the ministerial order power, I could be wrong, is 34. I've got a copy here if you want. I can go through with you at the end, when we've got a little more time. We have a discussion paper on the bill. So if you go to the NHPPA website, you can find our discussion paper. And, where we raise a concern about a section, usually we reproduce the whole text there, and we certainly tell you what section it is. And we also have a link to the bill itself. Although it's very easy to find, you just go into the Parliament website and find current bills, and they'll give you the most current thing. Now, some things have changed in the bill. There's been about 5 or 6 amendments since we did the discussion paper. Like, so for example, one that readily comes to mind is we criticize the section where the minister gets to hear the appeal, because it used to say, the minister must establish, basically that you're guilty. Read like the minister has to find you guilty. And we said in our discussion paper, that's how it reads. We don't think that's what it means. It probably means the minister must determine. Well, they changed it. They took out establish and put in determine at the committee. So there have been some changes to the bill. But, they've been very minor, so that discussion paper is still very current. But under Section 8 of our charter, it basically reads that everyone has the right to be free from unreasonable search and seizure. And courts have drawn a distinction between administrative seizures and criminal seizures, and searches. So, for example, we want the public health inspectors to be able to go into restaurant kitchens and just make sure they're clean, right? Now, if they had to get a warrant to do that, really, they could do very little. So courts have said, no, on something where, you're just kind of checking, you don't know that there's a problem, we'll let you go into private property, not houses, not private houses, but businesses, and do a check. But if you think that they've committed an offense, and you're going there to gather evidence, then all of a sudden, you can't do that. But none of these administrative seizures let them to walk in and seize stock and keep it. That type of thing hasn't ever been upheld. So, I'm thinking that, seizing property without court supervision would be considered unreasonable under Section 8. So I'm sure the Department of Justice would have some creative arguments why we're wrong. But in my opinion, that it's Section 8 of the Charter that would be violated in this case. Now, when we're dealing with food and drugs, so if we were dealing with Bill C-51, I think Section 7 of the Charter would also be in play. So Section 7 basically reads, everyone has the right to life, liberty, and the security of the person, and the right not to be deprived thereof, except in accordance with the principles of fundamental justice. And courts have looked at the right to life and liberty and security of the person and interpreted that as including the right to make decisions of fundamental importance, including health decisions. So if we're dealing with a situation where the state is also taking away things that you rely on for your health, there is an argument that they're infringing Section 7 rights. So just to give you an example, there was a case, I think it was in New Brunswick. There's now been 2 cases where some of these kids were being seized by the state, the child protection, and the state was applying for a permanent custody order, and the court